a great day, I'm feeling good. Oh, the possibilities of what I could.
What happens when a blind man, a woman of color, and a child of immigrants get together to discuss how diversity, inclusion, and equity affect your business?
I'm moving fast. Oh, I'm optimistic.
Hi, everybody. Welcome to the Choose Inclusion podcast. I'm Yubi, and I am the Latino white guy of the group.
I'm Nina. I am the woman of color in the group.
And I'm Mike. I'm the blind guy.
Hello, Choose Inclusion audience. This is Yubi, and welcome back to another amazing episode. I want to say hello first and foremost to Nina and Mike, my co-hosts. Hello, team.
Hello.
Hello, hello.
And I want to introduce two amazing people. I was connected with them last fall, and the work they're doing is incredible. And they hail from Israel, which I was lucky enough to spend about 2 months in Israel after I graduated college. And it's just one of the most incredible places I've ever been to. And I can't wait to get back. So I want to introduce Holud Ayuti and Ariela Rosen. They are co-CEOs of PresenTense, which is located right in Startup Nation, and I'll let them talk about that in Israel. But hello, both of you. Welcome. How are you?
Hi, Yubi.
Hi, Yubi.
We're doing
Mike.
great.
Yeah, and Ariela, you were just saying you spent all day with 15 6-year-olds for a birthday party. So how was that?
Oh, that was interesting. I even have a story for our podcast because one of the girls was asking me why I have a big behind, and I was trying to explain to her that it's because I'm fat, and she looked at me because she couldn't understand why I said, that I'm fat, because she knows it as a negative word. So it was fun. So I even got to educate a little bit on the way.
Oh, well, that's good.
Yeah.
It is interesting, right? Like children just ask questions, there's no filter.
Yeah. It's amazing, but it's also amazing to see that what the 6-year-old is thinking already.
Right.
Because to her it was already a negative word. So that was also interesting. How young we are when these thoughts are planted in our heads.
That's a great segue, actually. It's a great segue because as a token blind person, I don't obviously see kids that say this, but I hear them, as I'm, wherever it name the location, but I'll hear kids, "Mommy, why does that guy have a stick?" Like it's, and then you hear the mom, "Shh, shh, oh, don't say anything," right? Like it's this whole hush hush, like, so even at young ages, you hear kids like, don't ask those questions, so obviously blindness is something that is, stereotypically, like it's frowned upon and that programming starts from a young age.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Thank you for bringing that up, Ariela and Mike. And that it's not, it's one aspect of all of this that we're talking about, because so tell us about Present Tense. I think what you're doing is incredible. And I want to bring that to the forefront and talk about the difference that you're making in people's lives in Israel.
Okay, so you began by saying we have two people from Israel, which is the startup nation, and absolutely Israel is known for being the startup nation. But if we look at some numbers, in reality, about 9% of the entire population takes part of the startup nation, which is not a bad number. It's quite good. But what happens with the extra 91 or the other 91% is that these populations, which are mostly underprivileged or socially marginalized or social and geographic periphery communities, do not have the equal opportunities as the people who are currently working at the startup nation, as entrepreneurs, as dreamers, as tech workers, whatever. They don't have the same opportunity as as these people. So what we try to do at Present Tense is to bring diversity into the startup nation, make the startup nation more inclusive and more diverse. And we do that by making tools of entrepreneurship accessible to social and geographic peripheries across Israel. We work also in East Jerusalem. And we have a variety of programs. We have this concept that includes a couple of programs, which is also exposing young adults, youth in high schools, diverse communities to tools of entrepreneurship by doing workshops and lectures and bringing them to tours at high-tech companies and giving them as many information as possible for them to be able to make the decision whether or not they're interested in being a part of this startup nation. And in the end, one of our we're most famous for doing accelerators, business accelerators and tech accelerators and social accelerators for these populations to give them the tools and the know-hows of being an entrepreneur, of developing in the startup nation. And in the end, for us, developing in the startup nation is not being a unicorn. It's not having an amazing idea which you'll sell, do an amazing exit with Google with billions of dollars. It's more the realization that you have the abilities and the opportunities to take control of your life and decide what's the correct path for you, and have the tools to be able to develop yourself and your community financially and socially. That's present tense in a nutshell.
I love what you're doing, because I think that one of the things that you're focused on in terms of creating an equitable world is really focusing on one of the economic determinants of making social change, which is really figuring out can you build and support startups. One of the things I was hoping that you could explain to our listeners, though, is that I think a lot of our listeners are U.S. centric. So could you talk to us a little bit about what does diversity mean in the context of what you're doing in Israel?
Okay, so go ahead, Ariela.
I wanted to give you a chance to take a breath. So that's a great question, Nina. Israel is extremely complicated, and diversity and the way the communities are, I want to say, sectored, because unfortunately that is still the case. So unfortunately, the politics affected a lot. So we have the Arab community, we have ultra-Orthodox Jewish communities those are the lowest numbers, lowest representation, and Ethiopian community. Those are the three lowest representation communities in regards to cultural backgrounds. And of course, we're also dealing with inclusion of different abilities, people with different abilities, and so on. So that's in a nutshell as well.
And women, obviously, only 24% of the entire startup nation is women. So obviously, inclusion also applies to gender inclusion and equality.
Well, and I think what I love about what you're doing, I mean, there's centuries of history, and Holod, you talked about Jaffa being probably the oldest city in the world besides next to Jericho, right? And
right.
What are the challenges that history brings to what you're doing? Are there challenges, and how do you approach those?
Where do I begin?
Yeah, right.
So let's begin 5,000 years ago. Jaffa, I am from Jaffa. Jaffa, if you ask me, is the most beautiful place on earth. And if you haven't been here, and you should. But so the history that comes with Jaffa is basically the history or the conflict that Israel is built on. So it's the different populations, the different cultures, different religions. It's a huge and beautiful diversity of people who who have been living together for centuries and for thousands of years, basically. But in the end, in the end, it's a periphery in a central area. So Jaffa now is a part of Tel Aviv. It's Tel Aviv Jaffa. And Tel Aviv, if you look at rankings of startups, of development in the world, Tel Aviv is ranked always 5 or 7, so very, very high numbers. And Jaffa is never, no one really thinks about Jaffa or says Jaffa, Jaffa more specifically. So it's this how can I say it? It's this mix, but also a conflict between the very old, and the very new. It's the startups, the technology, the development, the amazing new things that are happening here day to day, as opposed to the community that is left behind, the old community, the locals. And what's happening now, I think this is something that is happening all over the world, that the old, the ancient, the historical is becoming something really attractive for people. And so a huge movement of gentrification is happening from Tel Aviv to Jaffa, where the citizens of Jaffa, the people who have been living here for centuries, are becoming guests in their own homes. And the new communities that are coming from richer, more established populations is denying people from Jaffa to stay here. So I think the answer that we're trying to give is that we're taking the local community in Jaffa, the Arab community, and the older Jewish community here, and giving them the tools to be able to face the startup nation, to face this new population coming in, and take advantage of the benefits that lie in this gentrification, in this renewal, in this refreshment of the city, this old beautiful city that we're living in.
Well, the one thing where that applies in my mind to what our audience is trying to do, as far as creating inclusive spaces, right, so that anybody can see themselves being a part of that. I think about a lot of the obstacles, or even more so, like I think about some of the excuses, right, that organizations have. And it just seems to me like, I mean, what you all are facing is 5,000 years of history, but there's so much richness there, and there's so many things that we can learn from that. But and there's so many different types of people there who can bring amazing different types of experiences to the table. That there's, I guess that my point is, there's no excuse to being able to build an inclusive place of work.
Absolutely.
And it's Mike always talks about this. We were very intentional about the Choose Inclusion name, because diversity is mandatory, as he says, and inclusion is a mindset. And so you have to choose into that, and you have to build that, and you can. And I think you all are proving that in quite an amazing historical way, but bringing newness to it, to bring all of these people together who for centuries have many times been in conflict with each other.
Yes, and I think that, like you said, diversity is mandatory. It's not really mandatory here, but a lot of startups and companies in Israel are stating that they want to be, they need to be diverse, and inclusion is the hardest part. If we think about what's going on with the Arab community, for example, in the tech industry, in startup industry here in Israel, the numbers are very low. It's about 1.4% of the entire industry, which is a really sad number, especially because the Arab population in Israel is 23%. And these 1.4%, they don't feel included, and most of them are still in very junior entry level jobs in the startup nation. So inclusion is hard work, but it's also, absolutely, these companies need to choose inclusion. There is still a long way to go here.
So and I've heard, and I'm super. This is Mike, and I'm super fascinated, especially with this, amazing part of the world, right? So culturally diverse, religious, like just all this, like this nexus. And I've heard a couple of different things about the broader people with disabilities community. And I've heard that Israel as a country is actually super kind of supportive of people with disabilities. Now, I've heard that as just kind of a blanket statement, but I'm curious, is it the same blanket statement, let's say, within the Arab community as it is with, let's say, the Jewish community, as it does that make sense what I'm asking?
Yes,
Yeah,
absolutely.
I'll say I think Israel does have a lot of efforts in in incorporating, I will say, or in including or trying to support employment of people with different abilities. But I think that the problem is that the efforts are for very junior jobs and very basic skills. So there isn't an effort to actually provide access to high to high to higher education. We do have, of course, physical accessibility everywhere, but it's not enough. It's not sufficient. I will say that PresenTense, actually, we had the first accelerator for assistive technology for solutions for people with disabilities. Back in 2013, it was the first accelerator in the world. And back then, there was also a lot of feedback that there's no economics in it. There isn't enough of a big market of clients. And I'm happy to say that we can see now in 2021 that there's much, just worldwide and not just in Israel, much more startups that are working for solutions for assistive technology and understanding the needs and even the prospect, the financial prospect in that.
Absolutely. No, I love hearing that because just in the United States, last year was the first, the National Center for Disabilities, NCD, did the first ever, and it's sad, in the United States, 2020, it was the winter of 2020, where the first business pitch contest took place here in the United States. So love hearing that Israel was, 7 years ahead of the United States on this. And they're just, I do believe that assistive technology, again, is not just for this broader people with disabilities. And if you look at the global numbers, there's a lot of people across the globe that need some kind of assistive technology. So it's not a small demographic. So love hearing what PresenTense is doing with that. Is there a difference though culturally as well? Like, do you see differences, with the disability community or differently abled community across the different cultures within inside of Israel as well?
I can say about the Arab community that we are still developing this muscle of including people with disabilities and different abilities. There is a lot of progress being made, but we began this conversation by talking about how different abilities are perceived in different cultures. So the traditional Arab culture still finds finds shame in disability, and not only in disability, in disease in general. So a person with cancer will never say he has cancer. But as the world progresses, the Arab community is progressing, and so there is still, there's still a difference, but we're moving in the right path, I hope.
One of the things that's obviously had a huge impact in the world and how we are approaching our work is COVID. How has that impacted the work that you've been able to do at PretenSe? Or PresenTense, sorry.
No worries. It's one of the hardest names we could have chosen for working with different communities. PresenTense is not a very Israeli friendly name, but so with COVID, I think COVID really hit hard for everyone, but we were able to bounce back really quickly, and we saw the benefits of COVID before we saw the bad things in this time. I'll let Ariela talk about a little bit about some of our amazing alumni and what they did during COVID, but we actually launched the alumni community of PresenTense during COVID. It enabled us to host meetups where people from different communities and from all across Israel could join. We even had a series of meetups in Arabic when every single company and organization were doing meetups in Hebrew and English. We realized that there isn't enough meetups in Arabic, so we launched a series of meetups in Arabic. And so to this series, we had people from the West Bank and Gaza who joined, which was amazing. So COVID has enabled us to reach more communities, to reach more people, but it really gave us the mindset or the understanding that the underprivileged communities or people, socially marginalized communities are the ones that were most affected by COVID, because when the general population was able to, or privileged population was able to just continue working from home by just opening a laptop or a smartphone or a tablet or whatever, people from disadvantaged communities did not have the access to a tablet or a smartphone or even an internet connection. So this is something that we are dealing with, but yeah, there was a lot of opportunities in COVID for us.
Well, well, first of all, let me ask this question: how can we help you? Besides, hearing from you about the great work you're doing, what are some other ways that we can help, or that our audience can help?
So thank you for asking that, Yubi. First of all, when we met you also, we told you that we'd love to come and have you speak as inspirational lecturers for our alumni and for our community. And anyone that's interested in doing that or volunteering in any way is extremely welcomed. We're a non-for-profit organization. And we're always looking for support, having said that. So we're happy to receive any type of support for that. That, of course, also we were affected as everyone during COVID and had to do everything leaner to be able to continue working. Yeah, so
Absolutely.
we would love any contacts, any requests to come and volunteer.
Well, any excuse to come visit you, yes. So we'll
we're doing everything
we'll
on
keep
Zoom
talking.
now, Yubi.
Are we doing a road trip? Is this another road trip?
This is part of the road trip.
First of all, yes, Khulud, we have Khulud and Badoui that works with us, one of the best tour guides of Jaffa, so you have to come. And regardless, we are doing, as Hulot mentioned, everything on Zoom now. So it's really easy to host you as lecturers or as advisors in different sections of our accelerators.
That sounds great. I'm ready for it.
Yay!
Absolutely. Well, I can't thank you both enough. It was so great to connect again, and yeah, let's keep connecting. Let's figure it out. Let's keep chatting. We would love to support you in a variety of different ways, and I'm just excited that our audience, you know, gets to hear this global perspective. We try to bring in a global perspective as much as possible because, you know, we're all in this together. You know, and it's COVID has given us the opportunity to, you know, truly cross borders, and it doesn't matter anymore. So thank you again. Thank you for bringing your story, for the connection. Thank you, Choose Inclusion audience, as always. Check out chooseinclusion.com for this episode coming soon, and obviously our other episodes. And yeah, thank you both again so much, and thank you, Mike and Nina. It was such a pleasure.
Thank you, ladies. So appreciate you and what you do. Thanks, Nina. Thanks, Ubaldo.
Thank you all for this, and thank you for this opportunity to meet you guys and speak to you and your amazing audience.
Wonderful. Thank you both. Talk to you soon.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thanks for listening to the Choose Inclusion podcast. Make sure to subscribe to us on Apple Podcasts and Spotify. And you can see closed captioning for this podcast on our YouTube channel. You can find us online on our website, chooseinclusion.com, and contact us on Twitter @chooseinclusion.